James Williams there, having a hard time of it in Brussels at the end of a long week. Now, the story moves back to Westminster, of course, and more threats to Theresa May's leadership in the papers this morning. But here to talk about that and all what Labour should be doing is the MP for Avon, who's also a member of the Commons Brexit Committee, Stephen Kinnock. Thanks very much for coming in. Brother. We'll pick up on a point maybe James made there about what happened in Brussels last week before we move ahead to what should happen next. What do you make of what Theresa May was floating as this idea that the negotiating period should go on a little bit longer?
Well, she's scrambling around trying to bring in last-minute solutions where really the problem is that the foundations for this negotiation have never been set properly. If she had understood from the start that we need to stay in the European Economic Area and the Customs Union, that would have solved the Irish border, and I think there's a cross-party majority for it in Parliament as well.
But we are where we are at the moment. Do you think this idea of extending that transition period is something which merits further consideration?
The problem with the backstop is, as the European Union has pointed out, a backstop can't be time limited. You know, it's no longer a backstop. You can't have an insurance policy only up for a certain date. You know, your house might burn down at any time, and you need an insurance policy which is timeless. So they've said, look, we need a backstop which is open-ended. In that time, we will try and find a solution to the Irish border which doesn't involve hard infrastructure. But as soon as you start putting time limits on these things, the backstop cease to be a backstop.
Is part of the problem here that the only thing we're really hearing from Labour on this is this idea of the 6 tests, many of which aren't realistically achievable, even by Labour's own standards. And we're not getting the clarity, the single message from Labour, which you might expect from something so important as Brexit.
So Labour's 6 tests, I think, do set out what reflects the mandate. 52-48 is a narrow mandate. Leave the EU, but don't wreck the British economy in the process. The problem is that it doesn't say how to do it, and there needs to be a mechanism and a method for doing that based on what you can land with the European Union and what you can land with Parliament. And the only option in that case is European Economic Area plus a form of customs union.
And that's something you've been saying for months, for a good couple of
2 years
now. Yes.
Yeah.
But Labour aren't listening. You know, you seem to be a lone voice saying this, whereas Keir Starmer, John McDonnell, Jeremy Corbyn aren't really moving along to your way of thinking?
Well, a few months ago, we had the EEA amendment that came back from the Lords. 76 Labour MPs voted for it. I think it was the largest rebellion in the history of the Parliamentary Labour Party. So there's strong support for the proposal. What's interesting as well is that there's strong support amongst many Conservatives. You see Tories like Nick Bowles coming out for it now. So, you know, don't write it off. When we come to the meaningful vote, it will be an amendable motion. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there for a cross-party majority. It's time for backbenchers in Parliament to take back control.
OK, backbenchers, but you're not in control. The leadership is in control, and you don't seem to be able to convince Jeremy Corbyn to come round to your way of thinking.
Of course, the more shambles and chaos we see from the government, the greater the risks are for our country. And I think that's when minds will focus and a position will have to be taken. The time for constructive ambiguity is over. We need to make a clear and substantial proposition to Parliament and to the British people.
So, and in constructive ambiguity, you're talking about Labour there, you know, because what we're not getting from Labour is, or are answers here.
The 6 tests are clear, but what we've been ambiguous on is how to get there. It's all very well having the what, but the what's not much good without a how. If we could combine the 6 tests with a clear mechanism, European Economic Area plus a customs union, I think you've got a winning formula there that commands a cross-party parliamentary majority.
I guess the problem with
solves the Northern Irish issue.
But I guess the problem with your European Economic Area argument would be you're still paying for membership for the European Union, and you're also still then, in terms of immigration, not as able as many would like to control that immigration issue.
On immigration, Articles 112 and 113 of the EEA agreement enable any country to pull the emergency brake on any one of the 4 freedoms that underpin the single market.
Which existed before 2016, which has existed before the Brexit. You know, that could have happened anyway.
Emergency brake is not possible under full membership of the European Union. The emergency brake is something that comes under 112 and 113 of the EEA agreement. On the budget, it's substantially less. Norwegians pay per capita about 50% of what the UK pays. But you have to, if you want to be a member of the club, you have to pay some kind of membership.
But the UK doesn't want to be a member of the
club.
club.
For what
they voted out. And what you're saying, if it's 50%, it would be 20 billion rather than 40 billion. That's not going to fly with the 52% of the population who said, we want out of the club. We don't want to pay for the membership fee.
There are two clubs here. There's the club which is about further political integration, that kind of deeper political project that many EU member states want to go on. We voted to come out of that club. We didn't vote to come out of the single market and the customs union. You can interpret the result in any way you want, but a 52-48 mandate in my book is not a mandate for a hard, draconian Brexit. Is a mandate which says, actually, let's go back to the relationship we had with the European Union in the 1970s and 1980s. The common market, a strong economic relationship, but not part of that deeper political integration.
And I guess then, if you're wanting to give another pitch to the people of the UK about your EEA plus, you know, the idea you're outlining, surely the best way to do that then would be in another referendum.
Well, I believe that the purpose of politics is to unite and not to divide. And whilst I'm full of admiration for people who are campaigning for that second referendum, I think the purpose of being an MP is to try to reunite our deeply divided country. And one thing we know a referendum won't do is reunite. It will drive even deeper divisions. I'm looking for a solution to this, which enables us to navigate through in a way that protects jobs, solves Northern Ireland, commands a cross-party majority in Parliament, and has a chance of reuniting our deeply divided country.
But when you've seen 750,000 people marching on the streets of London yesterday, so many Labour members, it seems, are in favour of this idea of another vote. Aren't you out of touch maybe with Labour's thinking on this?
I believe, I may call it old-fashioned, but I think that Parliament is the institution that has to chart the course for the future of our country, and it's up to parliamentarians to get together and sort this out. There's a cross-party majority for a sensible, pragmatic, bridge-building approach to Brexit. I think we have to go all the way down that road. I absolutely understand people's frustrations because the Prime Minister has just handled this in such a terrible and shambolic manner. But we've got to find a way through this.
But even that isn't necessarily Labour's position. Labour's position is to see what deal comes back and then to push for a general election. And if that can't be done, then maybe push for another referendum. So is that something that you'd want to see change?
So politics is the art of the possible. I believe in compromise. I don't know what's happened in our country where it suddenly seems that compromise is not something that is a good thing. It's a bad thing. I think compromise is a strength. So we've got to commit to a whole nation approach which brings the country back together. And I think that it's up to Parliament to chart that course and to take us forward.
But do you think it's possible? Do you think there would possibly be enough support for your idea to get that through Parliament?
Yes, I think that there is a cross-party parliamentary majority for it. If you look at the number of Labour MPs and Conservative MPs who can come together around this point. And by the way, if you want a solution to Northern Ireland, it's perhaps something even the DUP should look at.
Right. On that note, we'll have to talk about that one another time. But for now, thanks very much for coming in, because that's